Part of the appeal of Georgetown to me, and I moved from Atlanta, so I moved across the country here, was that it has promise of being an incubator for preservation philosophy and practices. I knew that a lot of people were working in historic preservation in the community, and that history and preservation were values of the community. And so I was very hopeful that it would stimulate some thought for me and grow my mind and my experience, which it has.
It's a neat old town, and they like history and try to preserve it, and I think that's a good thing. One of my earliest memories is coming to Georgetown with my dad. We lived in Empire, which is up Highway 40, a few miles and pretty close to here. And we came by an old road called Union Pass across the hill, and I remember going to Nigel and Anderson's store when I was a kid.
I think the family has stayed here for so long just because of our roots, and we've all dispersed at one point but come back, but our family has still just maintained this store because it has so much history.
One of the biggest realizations I had in this position of Director of Hotel de Paris Museum was that we do not operate in a bubble. We are part of the community, and the community has troubles. And so that trouble is, frankly, being a ghost town. And the reason for that is because mining has left the area largely. There is one big mine operating in the county right now, and like every other mine, it has a shelf life and it will have a closing date. So to the credit of the mine, they are helping to educate this community about the future and to challenge people to think what comes next when the mine closes and that population associated with that mine moves away, the administrators, the workers. That will decrease the population of the county and people will start to leave it. It's already an issue, not enough people living in the county and not enough jobs and not enough housing, so it will get worse. And so this is why we've started conversations at Hotel de Paris about our future and is being a museum enough. And so we're doing a lot of internal visioning right now and floating ideas about what can we be, what can we become, are we enough? And so those ideas involve some potential for-profit businesses that will operate in conjunction with us, that will help build our image and bring us visitors so we can justify being open more.
I think it's important for any Masonic lodge to stay in business if they can. A lot of them are not. They're combining with other lodges, and some of them are just flat letting their charter go because of lack of members, and I think that's a tragedy. Early on, everybody that was somebody was a Mason. It's not that way anymore, and they were well thought of, and all your movers and shakers primarily were Masons. And there's been 14 presidents of the United States that were Masons. And the first one was George Washington, who this original lodge was named after. And he was master of his lodge in Virginia at the same time he was the president of the United States.
The town has changed. It's hard to say how much the town has changed. Of course, there's growth. The town has always taken care of itself and preserved its history through the years. It's always been very aware of its history. But now, since the late 1860s, or 1960s, sorry, we have had a good preservation ordinance. So that has really protected the town, and I think that has done a lot, as well as Historic Georgetown has really helped to preserve the historical aspect.
The restoration of the site goes back to the 1950s. And so we have 6 decades of restoration, conservation, preservation going on at this site. In 2010, about the time I started working for the hotel, or I'm sorry, for the museum, there was a large project that was a water intrusion project. Over the years, the cellar was getting wet. The water was trickling in. The floor joists had rotted in some areas. There were artifacts at risk, of course, mold and mildew issues, and also some destruction of plaster and finishes. And so money was raised to stabilize the building, and so we were able to address that sensitively, lock it into place for the safety of the building and visitors and staff, and stay open during the process. And I think the building is in the best shape it's been in probably since the turn of the century. So what I'm retrieving here is a signed first edition of the Personal Memoirs of U.S. Grant. And the interesting thing is, until recently, the staff did not realize these were signed. And a visitor on one of our tours was just asking him the question. And so this is an interesting space. It's set up like a library, but it would have been built as a salesman's showroom. And the reason we don't have it set up as a showroom but as a library is because we know these are the contents of the room when Louis Dupuis, the proprietor, died in 1900. And so this room is virtually frozen in time. We're lucky to have a document that we refer to as the inventory. And what happened was, shortly after Louis Dupuis' death, his lawyer came in to settle the estate, and room by room went through the hotel and listed the contents of each room. So we know exactly what was in this room when Louis dies, and those are the contents still today. And so you couldn't turn back time any better than what you see here. And so we have not only the physical object, but we have it in the right room. And thanks to historic images like these, we can even get the objects in the right place in the room. And so here you can see bookcases full of books, and there they are right there against that wall. Quartet used to play in here on Sunday afternoons. And this picture here is of a group of young people, high school kids from Georgetown, having a little party, probably around the holidays. They're dressed up, the boys in tuxedos and the girls in kimonos. And you can identify objects in the room that are still here, like the clock, the painting, the photograph. Ways that I've gotten more involved in the community that I didn't anticipate is helping to promote the town and the businesses in the town, not just my own, but the others, because I believe the businesses, there has to be a triangulation of things in order for the appeal to grow enough for people to come to town.
Growing up here was a wonderful place to grow up. There were not as many people as there are now, but we had a great time with sledding and skiing, of course, was a big part of our lives, in the summer camping and just playing up in the mountains, you know, and going up with your little hatchets and building little lean-tos and things like that. But of course, as an adult, it's been a wonderful, very cohesive town. I shouldn't say cohesive because no town is totally cohesive, but a town that is very interested in its historic the whole historic integrity of it.
And there is a lot of history here, and not only in this old lodge, but a lot of other buildings around town, and it's pretty neat, I think. And
there are very many people who come here and are very interesting from all walks of life, and from young families to retirees. And so in that way, it's really a good sense of community.